Hello and a good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to you, the good and wonderful people of the tube. Hope you're feeling grand and all is well in your world. Hello there, everybody. Welcome to the A&Q Wednesday, everybody. Before we get to question one today, if you want to submit a question for A&Q Wednesday, please go to the description box below. There's an email link. Email me your questions there. Okay, so anyway, let's go to question one today. So, question one today is, do you have any tips on learning to play standing up? I've been practicing mostly seated and find it difficult to stand up. It's not a pet peeve of mine, people sitting down and playing guitar, but I think you can play better when you stand up because you can move. You're freer. You're not crunched over the guitar. It's not crunched into you. You've got that freedom to move. You know, you can feel the beats more. You can move backwards and forwards. You can move about. You can go to a different place. You know, you're not static, so to say. You know, it's got movement. And the thing about music for me is music has so much movement in it. If you're just standing still, it's kind of not conveying that kind of thing. You know what I mean? I can't stay still when I play. You know, I can't stand it. I like to be able to kind of like move backwards and forwards. I like to be able to move the guitar about and this, that, and the other. And I can't do any of that if I'm sat down. And plus, I find it so much more comfortable to stand up and play than I do sat down. In all fairness, when I'm sat down playing, I make tons of mistakes because I'm so not used to having the guitar that close to me. And I don't like the crunched up position I end up in because I've got really bad posture. Not to quote Kurt Cobain. But like, I don't like it. I will recommend that people stand up as much as they can when they play guitar, you know, or any instrument, you know, bass, you know, any kind of instrument that's like kind of like, you know, like bass guitar, guitar, or anything where you don't have to be seated to do it. Just get up on your feet because you can feel the music more. You really can, especially if it's energetic music. If you're playing something like, you know, Iron Maiden, for instance, you don't really want to be sat down playing that. You want to be up, you know, you want to be moving. You don't go to an Iron Maiden concert and see them sat down. Digression, funny little story. I remember when they did the Death on the Road DVD, they did a song called what is it? I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, it's an acoustic song. I can't remember the name of the song because I'm really, really bad with song titles. But they do it. It's an acoustic song. And they all said basically what they do. They'd all sit down. And Steve Harris was like, I'm not sitting down. So he stands up. Everyone else sits down but him. And Bruce. But it's really cool. But yeah, you've got to stand up. You've got to stand up. So my number one tip really to start standing up and playing is when you stand up, get the guitar to the height it is when you're sat down. So high or wherever you are sat down. If you're sat down, it's a little bit lower. Get it to the same height. So when you stand up, the guitar is in a very familiar position and height to you. That way, that should make it easier. If you start out with the guitar super low, if all you've ever done is play sat down and you have the guitar super low, you ain't going to be able to play it very well. So you want to be able to mimic the height of the guitar when you're sat to when you're stood up with the strap. That'd be my number one tip there. You don't really want it any lower. You don't really want it any higher. You want it the same, so it's familiar. Like I say, that is the key here. But I do kind of have a bit of a hard time seeing so many players in this day and age sitting down. I have a hard time when I'm doing the videos at Anderton's sitting down. For the Jimmy one, I had to stand up to use the wah. But I don't like playing sat down. I find it really constricting, and actually I find it quite... in a way, it's kind of suffocating because it's like I want to move and I can't move, and I start to get really kind of like frustrated because I don't like just being sat with a guitar, kind of like plinking away like this. It drives me mental, to be perfectly honest with you. I can't stand it. I much prefer to be stood up. It just feels better. And like I say, you can move with it. You can move with the movement of music and the beat. And you can just like go around the place, and it's so much like nicer, I think, than just kind of like being sat. I've never liked playing sat down. Even when I'm learning songs, I actually prefer to learn songs sometimes just stood up. You know, I've learned quite a lot of songs stood up and just kind of like, you know, this anyway. But yeah, I mean, this is something I recommend to every single guitarist. Like, you know, stand up and play. Don't sit down. You know, don't sit in your chair and kind of hunch over your guitar and play like this. You don't want that. You want to be stood up and you want to be moving with the music and really, really feeling the pulse of it and going with it, really, more than anything. You know, you don't want to be that kind of like static you know, figure that plays guitar. You know, you really need to move. You know, I can't think of any guitarist. Excuse me. I can't think of any guitarist that I love who doesn't go with the music. Even Jimi Hendrix, when he plays Machine Gun at the Fillmore East, and he doesn't move backwards and forwards, but he sways, and he has his eyes shut, and he moves around, and he moves his head. You know, he's not just like this. You know, he's immersed in it. He's feeling every part of it. And I don't think you can really do that when you're sat. I mean, sometimes, obviously, you know, you need to sit down. I don't like playing acoustic guitar stood up because it feels weird because it's big. And I don't like it, but I don't really ever play acoustic guitar, to be honest with you. I'm very rarely on an acoustic. I don't really enjoy it, to be perfectly honest with you. It's fun sometimes, but if I can play my electric over it, I will. Yeah, get up, get on your feet. Like I say, my number one tip would be get your strap the right height. So if you sit with the guitar and it's there, when you stand up, that's where the guitar wants to be. Again, because that's where you'll know it. If that makes any sense, you know, you won't. If the guitar's any lower, it'll feel weird. If it's higher, it'll feel weird. You want to kind of do that. So that'd be my number one tip. And I say number two tip is just do it all the time. You know, as much as you can stand up and play, stand up and play. You don't want to be sat down all the time and kind of like static. You know, you need to move, you need to feel it. Close your eyes and just get absorbed in it, get soaked in it. And I think that's really difficult to do when you're sat down. You know, I find that so hard for me to get into something when I'm sat down. It's really, really difficult. So yeah, but my number one tip, and probably my only tip really, apart from to get up and do it more often than not, is get your strap height right. Like I say, if you sit like this, get the guitar sitting there. If you sit like this, to get the guitar sitting there. So when you play it, it'll be the same height and it'll be familiar. And then over time, you can either get it lower or it can stay where it is, depending on how you feel. When I first started playing guitar, I had the guitar really low because I wanted to be like Billy Joe. So I had the guitar really low and I was bashing out Green Day songs. When I got into John Frusciante, I realised I had to have the guitar a bit higher because I couldn't do some of the things that he was doing that low. And then when I got into Jimi Hendrix, it came up even higher. And for a long time, my guitar was about here. It was really high. And it's only in the last maybe 6-7 years, my guitar's got lower and lower. And I don't really know what it is, but I like where it is now is where it needs to be. And I think you'll find that throughout your kind of like guitar playing life is strap length will change. And also different guitars feel better at different heights as well. None of my guitars really have the same strap length. I've tried that and it never works. Getting like, you know, one homogeneous strap length for every guitar, it doesn't feel right. Certain guitars prefer to be lower, some guitars feel to be higher. It's really strange. Anyway, but yeah, that's what I would say is kind of like do it as much as you can. Get the strap to a height where it's not unfamiliar when you stand up. So yeah, that'd be what I'd recommend. But again, standing up is really, 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 really important. You know, you really need to stand up more than you need to sit down when you're playing an instrument. You really do. It'll help. I do get a bit tired of like, you know, scrolling through videos just to seeing guitarists sat down or bassists sat down. It's just my own little problem, people choose. It's not a worry or anything to anybody else but me. But I just kind of like I just feel that everyone you know get up on your feet and move around and really just like you can go for it more. You can move, and again, music is movement. You know, so it needs to move as well. You need to move as well with it. So yeah. So another part of question 1 is... So I need to move on. I do apologise. I spoke about that quite a long time, but hopefully it's okay. The other part of question 1 is... I bought a new guitar, but I keep going back to my number 1 guitar. How long does it take you to get used to new gear, and how do you resist the temptation of playing your original guitar? I don't really have temptation to play any other guitar than what I'm told to play on a daily basis. Like for instance, like today, it had to be this guitar, which is funny actually because the guitar I want to play is sat downstairs, and that's the guitar I want to play. But the music required this guitar today. It said I want this guitar for the intro jam and for this video. So Mr. 79's here today. And how do you? I don't really have temptation about switching to my Mr. White or anything like that. You know, I play him when I need to, and I play him others when I'm required to. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. But how long does it take me to get used to new gear? Not very long. Because I know what I want out of something, and I know how I want it. If it's a guitar, I know how I want it set up, and I know how I want the pickups. So invariably, I'll do that, and then once that's done, that's it. A lot of my guitars take maybe 5 minutes when I get them new for me to be like, right, that's it. And I'll know in that 5 minutes whether I like it or don't like it. Same thing with amps as well. You know, as soon as I plug into an amp, I'll know if it does what I want it to do, and if it doesn't, I'm not interested. I know what I want. And same thing with pedals as well. It doesn't take me very long to get used to stuff. Again, it's just simply because, and I've spoken about this before, Picture, is that I know what I want out of it. I'm not going to go searching in the pedal for something that I don't want. I know what I want, and when I get it, that's where it stays. I'm, again, massive creature of habit. Like, the same with my guitars. Once my guitars are set up, unless a string falls or something happens, a pop breaks or a select switch breaks or break a tremolo arm or whatever, they stay as they are. You know, I haven't, since I got this 79 Strat, it's got these strings on it that I put on it with the first night I got it to restring it so I could play it. And the setup is exactly the same. I haven't touched the setup. There's no need to. It's exactly where I want it to be. And things just stay where they are, basically, more often than not. Because like, all my guitars are set up differently, and they're set up to themselves. But the temptation of playing my original guitar, like I don't, yeah, I mean there is that time I was like, I really want to, like today for instance, like I really wanted to play this other guitar. It was the Oswald Jag, to be honest with you, people achieve the one you've seen. I wanted to play that for the intro jam, and music was like, no, I don't require that guitar today for what I want you to do in the intro jam. So it was like, I want the 79. So I'm not going to go against music. Music knows better than I do, and it did know better than I did. You know, because I was a bit like, I want to play the Jag, but music was like, no, there's 79, and lo and behold, I walk up here and put the 79 on, turn everything on, and the intro jam comes flying out of it. You know, that wouldn't have happened if I was playing the Jag. Again, I just listen to what music wants of me. You know, I just submit to it, you know, and it wanted the 79, so it gets the 79. You know, if tomorrow it wants me to play Mr. White, I'll play Mr. White. If it wants the 62, I'll play the 62. If it wants me to play the Azez or whatever, you know, I'll play it. If it wants me to play bass, I'll play bass. You know, it's one of those things, I just listen and obey. Because music knows better than I do. It's as simple as that. It's marionette, and I'm happy of it. But yeah, I don't really have that. It's just one of those things of like, you know, all these guitars have different voices, and they all react differently, and I can play them. They all feel differently, and I can play some better than others, and some will let me do things that others won't do. And depending on what music requires of me that day, it will know which guitar I need to play for that moment, if that makes any sense. Or for that song, or for that intro jam, or for whatever, you know, it'll know what I need for that kind of thing, and I've just got to listen. Basically, it's very easy, not very nice and simple. So, and again, today wanted the 79. I've got no problem playing the 79. I adore this guitar to death. It's literally heaven. It really is. This guitar is, again, the 79 is so much brighter than my other Strats, but I love it. So yeah, hope I said that part. And the last part, any warm-up stretch tips for fingers and hands? Hands are hurting if I practice too much. If it's a case of pushing through the pain barrier, no. If it hurts, stop. Never ever. If your hand starts to hurt, never keep going. You need to stop. If it starts to hurt, you need to stop, because if you push through it, you could damage something in your hand, and you don't want that to happen. One thing I do for warm-up kind of things, invariably, would be kind of something really silly. A lot of my warm-ups are not musical. I don't like them, but sometimes they help, like if your fingers are cold or anything like that. One of these things I do is go to the 9th fret, and I go 9, 10, 11 on the E, 9, 10, 11 on the A, 9, 10, 11 on the D, G, B, and E. And what I do is I'll legato it. So I'll play the string once and hammer on. And I basically just do that backwards and forwards and do it really until I get really fast. Now I descend as well. So I go E, A, D, G, B, and then E, B, G, D, A, E. So that kind of thing. And invariably, what I just kind of like gets my fingers going and stuff like that. There's also these other ones. Which is again, it's just a stretch exercise, just to kind of like to get everything stretched out. So I'll start on the 3rd fret on the low E, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret on the low E, 3rd fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret on the low E, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret on the A, and then it's the 4th fret, 5th fret, 7th fret on the D, 4th fret, 5th fret, 7th fret on the G. Then we repeat this last note here on the B string, but that's what makes it weird. And we go to the B string, 3rd fret, 5th, 7th, high E, 3rd, 5th, 7th. So and because it's an exercise, it doesn't really, and a warm-up exercise, it doesn't really have to be musical. So and again, it's not really about. That's not really about kind of like, making music. That's just kind of like, again, just getting my hand able to do what it needs to do. And again, I'll do that in some different kind of like patterns. So sometimes I will just go, and I'll try and make sure it's all down picks with this hand. Sometimes I'll try and do alternate picking. So sometimes I'll, again, legato it. And then sometimes I'll do different picking patterns, alternative picking patterns with this hand and this hand. So I'll kind of walk it up. Instead of it kind of like it just kind of like going like that, I'll do this. And then same thing down. Just little things like that. That's kind of really what I do. They're the kind of things. But again, stretch exercises, you got to keep them to a minimum because that can hurt. That can damage your hand. You don't want that. Invariably, what I do to warm up more than anything is just play chords. Spot the riff. But I just like messing around with just simple stuff. Just find a chord progression I like and go on that one. Anyway, I'm going to have to move on because I've got another 3 questions to go, and I've spoken about that for a lot. So I hope it's this question. I'm going to move on to question 2 now. Okay, so question 2 is question 2, right? Yes, okay. I'm moving along. Sorry, I'm just getting to the bit of the question. I haven't edited this one down. I ain't cropped it because I'm clever. So I've read that Strats and Telecasters from 1974 often aren't worth it. Obviously often aren't worth it for reasons that I mentioned, like the fact that I've spoken about 70s Fenders in the past. Like people ask me about them, and like it's stuff like that, like some are really heavy, some don't sound very good, some don't play good. That is very true, but you get that with pre-CBS guitars as well. So you said you turned 50 in 2024 and you're saving up to buy a birth year guitar, which is 1974. Am I better to avoid the hassle of vintage route altogether, get a new guitar, maybe a custom shop or whatever guitar speaks to me best? No, because not necessarily. You might find a 1974 Strat or Tele that works for you. You don't know. I mean, this is the best 70s Strat I've ever played, by far. I've been a lucky sod. I've been able to play quite a few. But in all fairness, the other 70s Strat that I played that was really good was a 74. It belonged to Roy Wood. And that was a great guitar. 3-tone sunburst, maple neck, great guitar. Great guitar. Really light as well. It was a lot lighter than this one. I mean, the 79's very light. You know what I mean? It's no heavier than all my other Stratocasters. But the 74 that I played when I was at Old Hat was very, very light. So they are worth it. But it's just like any of these old guitars and any guitar in general. Yet it kind of coming to the end. You do have to find the guitar that speaks to you the most. But going for a custom shop over something like this, it's really up to you, because you might find a vintage 74 Strat that really works for you, or Telecaster or whatever that really works for you. but you're gonna have to play the try it and try it and try it again game. I wanted a 70 Strat for a long time. I used to own a 77, and then when this one came along, I was like, I really kind of want another 70 Strat. I want the big headstock. I want the sound. I want the neck as well, and I want the way that they feel, and stuff like that. And because when I went to get this one, if this one was too heavy or the neck was naff, I wasn't going to buy it. It's simple as that. Because my 77's neck wasn't very good. It weighed more than the Titanic. It wasn't the best guitar in the world, to be honest with you. Compared to this one, the 77 would be a guitar that I would never want to go back to. So they are worth it, because like I say, I mean, I've played some real dog pre-CBS Strats. John Entwistle's 1962 Strat was terrible. It was awful. I've played some other pre-CBS Strats in my life where I'm thinking, it's all right. It's not anything special, So it's just kind of like playing that game, really, of trying to find the right one for you more than anything. And again, that might just take a bit of time. But I mean, I would recommend, if you want a birth year guitar, because I want a birth year guitar as well. I want one for mine. But I have yet to find one that I would, Yeah, but anyway, regardless of that. But it is worth going for. You might just have to shop about a bit and search about a bit and try as many as you can. I lucked out with this one. It could have easily been a dog, and I could have easily walked away and not bought it. And the search would have continued. But I just lucked out in the fact that it's literally amazing. It feels great, this guitar does, So what I would say is just look around in the vintage market. Go to some vintage guitar shops if you can. Like, take a day trip to, I don't know, anywhere. I don't know. There's quite a few in London. Denmark Street, stuff like that. Just take some day trips to these vintage guitar shops and try and find. Ring first, obviously, see if they've got any 74s, and just find the one. It's definitely worth going for, because you will find one. I'm positive of it, because I can imagine some people would pick this up and go, ugh, no, not for me. It's all down to personal preference, and again, like you said, what guitar speaks to you the most. So I wouldn't get rid of that idea. I would stick with it until literally you've exhausted every avenue. I wouldn't go for a custom shop. Funny enough, the guy who originally owned this one, because I'll say this being a one-owner guitar, the guy who owned this originally traded this for a custom shop. He wanted a custom shop more than he wanted this guitar. And that to me is crazy, but maybe he never liked this guitar. And in all fairness, it hasn't been played a great deal, so I'm kind of not surprised. He traded it for a custom shop. But again, this guitar works for me. Absolutely, it does. And again, it will never leave me, this guitar. So I would say definitely stick to that route and just go and try as many as you can. Because you never know. I'm sure you'll find one. I'm sure you will. Keep going. just until, like I say, until you've exhausted every avenue, keep going for it. You'll never know. You never know. Especially 74. My experience with 74 guitars are normally very, very, very pleasant. I've had quite a lot of pleasant experiences with 70s Fenders, to be honest with you. I don't see why they get such a bad rap. I mean, yes, some are terrible with their pickups, some are really stupidly heavy, and some necks are naff. But there was some of those in the pre-CBS era as well. Some of these 70 Strats are amazing, they really are. Anyway, hope that's the question. Going to move on to question 3 now. So, question 3. This one is difficult, to say the least. Question 3 is Marshall versus Orange. Fight. Different models and money aside, as a whole, which do you prefer? The classic Marshall sound or the classic Orange tone, and why? Okay, so that's pretty much a question I can't answer. And it's not because I don't want to, it's because I love both for different things. Like, for instance, these two amps here, I have flip-flopped between these two amps so much in the past few years. It's only since really getting my Boss Katana and now my Fender Super Reverb, there's other things that have come in to kind of upset that order. But the choice between a Marshall and an Orange would be very, very difficult to make, because I like the more upfront approach of a Marshall sound. It's got more punch. The Orange is a lot. Orange to me, the CR120, they're a lot darker and they sit more back and they're more mellow. They don't quite have as much punch and as much smack as a Marshall, to me, anyway. So it's really difficult to go, well, I prefer the Marshall over the Orange, because I like them for different things. There's not any amp in my kind of like amp collection or the amps that I love that I like just as a... Well, the only amp that comes close as doing a do-all thing is the Boss Katana. It really is. I mean, that is one of those amps where I'm like, I'm pretty sure no matter what I want out of it, I can get it. You know what I mean? The Marshall MG behind me, I can pretty much get anything kind of out of that, but it lacks in certain respects. And same thing with the CR120 as well. Whereas with the Katana, it's got everything. You know, it's got all the tonal range, it's got all the effects, you've got the tone studio. It goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. These amps do have limitations with them. There's also things on these two amps that I don't like, clean channels being one of them. I don't like the clean channel on either of these amps behind me. I don't like the clean channel on the CL120 or the Marshall MG. I think the Marshall MG's clean channel is a little bit sterile and way too bass heavy, and the Orange CR120's clean channel is sterile and, in my opinion, worthless for me. I treat these amps as single channel amps. I use the overdrive channel and that's the lot. And that goes for quite a lot of my amps, actually, to be honest with you. I very rarely have amps that I use a clean channel on. Again, I don't really like clean, so that's why. But if there was a choice between Orange and Marshall, I really don't know. Because it's really difficult to go, oh, it would be this one or that one. Because, again, at this point in time, I'm back to playing through my Marshall MG. I'm not playing through the Orange recently because I've been playing through the Orange so much, I was kind of after something different. And the MG sounds different to the Orange. It's brighter, it's got a bit more kind of punch in the mid-range. It's got more of that kind of like, a bit more of that kind of John Frusciante thing. And I wanted a bit more of that. And so I've moved away from the Orange for a little bit just to take a break. But who knows? I mean, tomorrow, next week, a month from now, 2 months from now, I could be back into the Orange because that's where I want to be. Or I could be using a different amp, you know. Because that's, again, it's where you're led at a certain point in time. To me, at this point in time, I'm led into the Marshall. Marshall MG is where I need to be right now. That's where I live right now. And for live use at this point in time, I'm really enjoying combining the CR120 with my Super Reverb. No, not that we've got many gigs at this point in time, but like, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. But if it was a choice between the two, I really don't know where I would go or what I'd pick. So I really love both, and again, they're both different beasts and different in what they do. So it's really hard to go that one or whatever, because if I took one away, I would miss what it does. Like if I just played exclusive through the Orange, I would miss what the Marshall does. If I played exclusive through the Marshall, I'd miss what the Orange did. And same goes for, like, you know, my Boss Katanas. If I just played solely through these, I would miss what the Katana does. And now I'd miss what my Super Reverb does, or my Fender Stage, or any of my other amps that I've got. It's a weird thing. It's really strange. Marshall is where I started really, though. If I'm being perfectly honest, that is where I started really. So I'd probably lean more heavily towards that. Maybe, I don't know. But because that sound is such a part of the sound in my head, the Marshall tone, it's really hard to go around that. Like I say, one of my favourite amps of all time is the Plexi, and it's a Marshall, you know. But at the same time, you know, the Orange does that kind of thing as well. But like I say, when I got my first Marshall, the Marshall MG, the Fish, that changed my world. You know, I was using a Carlsbro 100-watt combo up to that point, and before that, a PV Rage. When I got the Marshall MG half stack, my world changed and never went back to that kind of like searching for sound again, because I know exactly what I wanted. I could get it out of the Marshall, and I still can. These MGs are one of those amps that if I was at a gig and my pedal board packed up, I could happily plug into this thing and just play the whole night plugged into the amp with no pedals. You know, it's one of those amps, and that's kind of how I judge amps. Is like, can I do that comfortably? And would I be happy doing that? And with the Orange and the Marshall here, I'm very happy doing that. I have done a few kind of like gigs and jam sessions with the CR120 just on its own with no pedals, and the same thing goes with the Marshall as well. So But Marsh is where I really started. That's what really kind of gave me that sound to start with, which is the John Frusciante thing, Jimi Hendrix thing. You know, it's that sound. You know, it is that sound. But then, obviously, kind of later on with Orange, you know, the CL20 I adore. You know, it's one of my favourite amps of all time, or will be forever. But it's hard to pick, like, you know, well, that is the one. Like I say, because I like them for different things. They're not the same. You know, the Marshall doesn't sound like the Orange doesn't sound like the Marshall. So to pick one above the other, I would always miss the other if it wasn't there. You know what I mean? It's why I've got a Marshall and Orange here, Marshall's and Orange at home. I just don't really like to be without either, really, to be perfectly honest. And now I don't really like to be without my Fender, because I'm aiming more in that direction. It's very, very strange. It's very strange. I'm really starting to love the Fender sound, which is something I've never really got on with before now. But my Super Reverb, since I got the Super Reverb, things are changing again. You know what I mean? They really are changing again. And when I don't have it because it's not here, I miss it. You know, it's like I want to play through it and I don't have it. It's back in Lincolnshire, so I'm like, and I've got to wait till I get back home until I'm playing it again. And it's just, you know, that's kind of like, that can be quite agonising, to be honest with you, people tube sometimes. But again, when I play through my Fender, I miss the Orange and the Marshall and the Katana. So it's like, well, it's sacrifices all the time. Because again, all the amps I've got, I love them for what they do individually. It's not just kind of one thing, it does one thing, if that makes any sense. They all do the same thing differently. It's really cool. I think I contradicted myself there, but that's okay, because that's what I wanted to say. They all do the same thing differently. Like the Orange does exactly what I want it to do, but it's different to what it does, what the Marshall does. It's pretty strange. But yeah, I really don't know, PeopleTube. It's really, really difficult. Question to you, PeopleTube, though. Orange or Marshall? Description box below. Or, what is your preferred amp? Let us know your favourite amp in the comment section below. Which would you pick if you had to? Okay. So, going to move on to the final question of the day, PeopleTube. Question 4 is, why do you never buy expensive guitars? I don't think it's just because of the money. It's got to be something behind it. I don't feel the necessary need to own loads of expensive guitars. I do have some very expensive guitars, you know, this being one of them. The 62 is probably the most expensive guitar I will ever own. You know, that is outrageously expensive, but it is what it is. And the Oswalds that I've got, they're not cheap. You know, I'm just... It's not the fact I have an aversion to buying expensive guitars. It's just that I don't really focus on that so much. It's more what the guitar is and how it feels. You know, when I picked this guitar up, I was happy to pay what I paid for it because this guitar speaks to me on a very, very, very high level. You know, it's like it's always been there, is what I'm trying to say. It's a really strange feeling. And it's the same with the 62. When I first played that 62 and I did the first video on it, it kind of elevates you. It's a funny feeling. It's really hard to say, explain. But I'm sure we've all been there, where you play a guitar and you're just like, you know, I don't care what I have to do. I have to have that. And that's what I did with the 62, and that's what I've done. Well, that's what I did with the 79. You know, obviously, it's inheritance money, but you know that I could have bought any other thing, but it had to be the right 70s Strat. That's what I wanted to do with that money, like I've said. But there's just certain guitars that you come across where you're just like, I need to have that, and it might be expensive, but I've got to do it. I've got to have that because you never know. My friend Nick, he bought a 1952 Les Paul Gold Top. It's on this channel years ago now, and he bought that one, and he was like, he's been after one forever, and he finally got one, and it was just like, you know, it didn't matter about the price, he just had to have it. And that is the thing. I think that's okay as well. Like, you know, I think there's kind of thing in that. But I do love the cheap stuff just as much. I wouldn't trade any of my guitars in for another 60 Strat or an old Gibson or one of those Murphy Lab guitars I played in Andertons. They're amazing. Those Murphy Lab Les Pauls are amazing. But I wouldn't be about to trade one of my Les Pauls for it. because I get more enjoyment from my lower end stuff than I do the expensive stuff, because I'm so aware of how much it is, and I don't really like that hanging over me. These guitars, this guitar, the 62, they're expensive, but I don't see them that way because of how they make me feel. This is probably not making any sense, but this is in the mind of Dave. And I wouldn't trade those two guitars in the world. This guitar and the 62, I wouldn't. They're never leaving me. You know what I mean? They are mine until I'm no longer alive. That's where I'm putting it, Dave. Anyway, but I just get as much joy out of playing the Ibanez Aziz, whatever, as I do my 1962 Fender Strat, or my 79, or Mr. White, or my Red Oswald. You know, I get as much enjoyment out of playing any guitar, because I just love the guitar. If it's got 6 strings on it, I'm going to love it, invariably. You know, there is obviously exceptions to that kind of thing, but I sometimes obviously it can't justify it either. You know, I could justify this one because obviously, you know, I've been looking for a long time to find something 1970s that I loved, you know, and I knew it wasn't going to be a quick, like, you know, just go to a guitar shop and there this is. But, you know, I don't want to bring money into it, to be perfectly honest with you, because I hate talking about money. But I'm not the wealthiest of human beings. You know, I make sacrifices to buy guitars and amps over other things. You know, I choose to buy guitars, amps, and pedals and all these things over going out for a meal or going out on a Saturday night or whatever. You know, I choose to buy these more, and that's just the way, because this is what I love. This is me. Because it's really hard to explain this. Yeah, it's really hard to explain, but I just enjoy regardless of price rate. I don't really go by price. If a guitar's good, the guitar's good. It's as simple as that. You know, I love playing this as much as I love playing like the Ibanez or my Jet guitar, which cost me £149. You know, this costs substantially more than the Jet, but it doesn't mean it's a better guitar. It just feels differently. You know, and I didn't buy it because it's for kind of like, hey, look, I've got a 1979 Stratocaster. Look at me, aren't I special? I bought it because the guitar speaks to me and will do things that my other guitars won't, and makes me feel differently. So all my guitars feel differently. They all have their own little thing, and this one speaks in a different way to any of my guitars. But I just get as much enjoyment, like I say, out of playing my Jet 149 Strat copy as I do out of the 79 Strat or the 62. And it's not belittling the fact of, like, you know, these guitars are, you know, oh, they're not worth it, because that comes down to you at the end of the day. But I don't really. There's just certain guitars that you just have to have. It's like if you go into a shop and it's just something you really, really want, you have to have it. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of people who go, oh, it's been materialistic. Like, so what? I'm a human being. We are materialistic. You know, I don't really care. You know, I played this guitar and I wanted it, and that's why it's here. You know, all my other guitars, you know, I wanted them. That's why they're here. You know, the amps are the same. You know, if I didn't want it, I wouldn't have it. And if I didn't love it, I definitely wouldn't have it. So, yeah, I mean, sorry, I remember the wording. Yeah, I don't think it's just because of money. It's got to be something behind that. Yeah, I mean, every guitar speaks differently, and I just love these underdogs. I love the underdog stuff. I love the way it sounds. There's, you know, this amp here, which you haven't heard yet. It's a proper underdog. I love it. And I just, you know, when I was coming up on guitar, like, you know, I couldn't afford any of this stuff. It's only like, you know, I really don't know how to word this. I feel like I'm making a total fool of myself, people with you, to be perfectly honest with you. And I'm just got the fear here. This is really hard to explain. I wish you could just look in my head and then you'd be able to see it. It just comes down to feel. Like I say, it just comes down to feel. I just don't feel... I just love certain guitars, and I have to have them. And I love them because of the way they look, the way they sound, the way they feel, the way they speak to me, the way they play. Money is always something that I just kind of like brush aside. Once it's paid for, I don't care about that. I've bought it. I don't care about that. I'm not buying it to pose with it. I'm not buying it to be a status thing of me. Like, hey, look, I've got vintage guitars. I'm buying them because they can push things that music wants of me in directions that my other guitars can't. This is very hard to explain, and it probably sounds really nonsensical to a lot of people, but that's okay. This is my head. But yeah, that is it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not well off enough to buy half the stuff I would love to buy. I would love to buy a lot more stuff than I can afford to buy. I have to be very, very strict with the budget I put on myself to buy gear. Some months I can maybe stretch a bit further. Some months I can't because I have things to pay for, like my van, for instance, or food, or drink or stuff like that. But again, I do have a lot of sacrifices in that as well. I tend to, I don't go out. I don't drink. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. I just spend all my money that I get. If it's not going on keeping me alive or getting me from A to B, it's on musical equipment, or other people, to help them out or whatnot. So, I'm not trying to kind of ever be that guy who's like, hey, look at me. I don't do that. I hate that. Oh, this is so difficult. I'm having a bit of a crisis with this question, to be perfectly honest with you. I kind of and ahed about answering this question, and now I feel like I wish I'd never started, because I feel like I'm just making a mess of things. Anyway, but again, I do have expensive guitars. Not all my guitars are cheap. I just love cheap guitars as much as I love expensive guitars and mid-price guitars. I don't care if it's got 6 strings on it. I love it. Simple as that. And it speaks to me on that level. I'll love it even more. It's not all about price. No, invariably it's not about price. If something hooks me that much, then, within a reason, I will do everything I can to try and get that kind of thing, if that makes any sense. No, it probably doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I don't know. I'm gonna stop because I'm gonna dig myself into a very horrible hole, and I don't want to be in there. So I'm gonna stop there. But yeah, but again, like I say, I could answer this very simply and not got myself into tears about it. But again, yeah, I love cheap guitars as much as I love expensive guitars and this, that, and the other. And I've played some ridiculously expensive stuff that has underwhelmed me. And I thought my cheap stuff's better than that. Like I said, I wouldn't trade any of my Les Pauls for a Gibson. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't trade. I just don't see the point. My Les Pauls do exactly what I want them to do. Why would I trade them just for a name? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense to me. If I've got something that works and does what I need it to do, why would I trade it for something that might do what I need it to do but might not? It's difficult. Again, playing those Murphy Lab Les Pauls, they were amazing, but they don't do anything that my Revelation doesn't do, or this guitar that's sat over there, which you'll see soon, does. They don't. Plus, there's always the fear of owning these things. I've had it so much with the 62 Strat. I have it with Mr. White. I have the fear of damaging them or breaking them or anything like that. Like, if something happened to that 62 Strat or this 79 Strat, I can't replace these things. If these break, they're broken. If it's beyond repair, it's gone. And I'm very well aware of it, and I cherish everything I've got. I look after everything I've got, because I know for a fact of, if it goes, the odds on me being able to replace it are 0. mate, most of the time, because these guitars, they're in, you know, I could get another 79 Strat, but it won't be as good as this one to me, you know, or it might be, it might not be. You know, it's luck of the draw. Anyway, I'm going to get off because I'm going to keep talking about that. I'm talking nonsense, I think. Anyway, I don't know. I don't think any of that made any sense, and if it did, yay. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry. I don't really know how to answer that question succinctly and to the point, because it's all in my head, and it's really hard to kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Go straight to it, because the words are kind of like jumbling. You know what I mean? It's a feel thing. You know, it really is. It's more a feel thing than actually kind of like me being able to talk about it. Maybe I should do a video about this. Why do I have so many guitars? And I can actually just talk about it and maybe really think it through and talk about it. Because again, all guitars are different. Anyway, who knows? Anyway, people, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, if you like the videos I do here, please consider becoming a patron at Patreon. Again, really helps me out. If you'd like to support me even more, there's other links in the description box below to my Bandcamp and my Teespring. And if you also submit a question for A&Q Wednesday, please go to the description box below as well. There's an email link there, email me there. So anyway, people, I hope you enjoyed this A&Q for what it was, and I'll see you again on Friday. Until then, have a great morning, afternoon, good evening, and goodbye.